Hello everyone and welcome to this training session on Nurture Principle 3. Nurture is important for the development of well-being. This is the latest in the series of trainings on nurture prepared by Scottish Borders Council for staff in all of our schools and nurseries. The final nurture principle, language is a vital means of communication, will be recorded later this academic year. Some schools will be delivering this training as a whole school inset, while some of you, especially if you're a newer staff member, may be tuning in to catch up in your own CLPL time. However you are joining, we hope that you will find this training informative and useful in your everyday practice. So we're just going to run through some quick training etiquette points before we begin today's session. Scottish Borders Council recognises the importance of nurturing approaches within all of our schools and education establishments and are really committed to promoting nurture in all contexts. So therefore this training is an important training for all schools and early years staff, and there is an expectation that you will dedicate your time to engage fully with this training. Training, as we've said, can take place in school staff groups, but this video is also available for individuals to review or for new members of staff at any time. But however you are watching it today, we do expect a commitment and that you will dedicate your time to really think about this and to really wrestle with the issues that we discuss. If you do have any questions on any of the material, please do get in touch. Your school EP or the Inclusion and Wellbeing staff will be very happy to speak with you at any time. And do be aware of yourselves, and it may be that this training triggers some strong feelings for you, and just really be aware of that and be aware of your own reactions, and feel free to take some time out if you need it. Self-care is really important, and we do encourage you to look after yourselves and to seek support should that be needed. Equally, please be sensitive to others' needs in this context too, which is all consistent with a nurturing approach. And finally, as we've already mentioned, this video is available to access at any time. So if you do need to go to at your own pace, then you can review parts later. You can access this freely on YouTube. So we'll just begin today with a quick reminder of the nurture principles. Most of you should be really familiar with these, having done the previous trainings. These are the principles that underlie nurturing approaches and are really at the heart of how we want to be understanding and supporting our children and young people. So there's 6 principles and they are all interlinked. So how we manage one will impact on the others. These principles are essentially about how we do things as individuals, as a school or setting, as a community, and as a local authority. And really our goal is for everyone to be oozing nurture, to be nurturing in all of our relationships and interactions, and to develop nurturing environments across our settings. So the 6 principles: learning is understood developmentally. The environment offers a safe base. These 2 principles, there are already videos in circulation that you may have already seen or can watch. Nurture is important for the development of well-being, but we're going to cover today. Language is a vital means of communication. This is the principle that's going to be covered later on this academic year, and so there will be a video available shortly for that. All behaviour is communication, and transition is important in children's lives. And again, for these last 2, these are trainings that we've already recorded, and you can access them if you haven't already done so. And for today, the focus: nurture is important for the development of well-being. So we'll just cover the aims of today's session now. First of all, we want to think about what we mean by the development of well-being. We talk a lot about well-being, but what do we mean by that, and how does nurture impact on the development of well-being? And we want to consider practical ways of implementing this nurture principle. So we want this training to be something that you can take away and that you can put into your everyday practice. So we're going to be thinking about staff well-being and self-care. We're going to be thinking about how you need to look after yourselves in order to be able to support the development of well-being in our children and young people. We're going to be thinking about the power of relationships with regards to the development of well-being. We're going to be thinking about how well-being should be embedded into the curriculum. And we're going to be thinking about getting good at taking in the good. And then finally, we will consider next steps for your school or setting. So we're going to start now with a group activity where we're going to get you to think and to speak with others about what you think we mean by well-being. So just to say that we're focusing here really on emotional well-being. There are very many types of well-being, for example, physical well-being, your physical health, financial well-being, but we really are focusing today on emotional well-being. So take some time with others in your group just now to think about what we mean by well-being. It could probably take about 10 minutes for this activity and then come back. Okay, hopefully that activity was useful for you. I just thought now we could share some quotes on how other people define well-being. As you can see, there are similarities and some distinct differences across these quotes, but these are all quotes from different organisations and how they define well-being. So here's one from the NHS. The way that people feel about themselves and their lives, the experience of positive emotions, people's perceptions that the things they do in their lives are meaningful and worthwhile, and life satisfaction. The experience of positive emotions such as happiness and contentment, as well as the development of one's potential. Having some control over one's life, having a sense of purpose. The state of being comfortable, healthy, or happy. The combination of feeling good and functioning well. Not just thinking about the fleeting moments of happiness we experience, but also our overall satisfaction with life. And our sense of self and our ability to live our lives as closely as possible to the way that we want to. So all of these are descriptions of well-being, and what we need to think about today is how the way that we nurture our children and young people impact on their well-being, impact on their ability to get the most out of their lives, to function well, to feel good, to be comfortable, healthy, or happy. And I think that's a really important message from the training today, is that how we nurture and relate to our children and young people has a direct impact on their development of well-being. So this is a quote specifically about this nurture principle by Dr. Chris Moore, an educational psychologist. It says that this is about creating a positive and optimistic ethos which promotes social and emotional development and ensures that children's individual strengths and talents are recognised and promoted. So how do we go about doing that? How do we go about applying this nurture principle within our schools and settings? Well, as we've already said in the aim section, we're going to think about 4 different aspects that are really important when it comes to this nurture principle around the development of well-being. And the first one that we're going to think about is about staff well-being and self-care. So I'm sure you've seen these sorts of quotes before, and I apologize if they feel a bit cliche or if there's any eyes rolling, but they are really important. And this is why we decided as a nurture steering group that we were going to put staff well-being first in this section because we recognize the importance of it. We recognize that you can't support children and young people in their development of well-being if you're not feeling well yourselves. So you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to take care of yourself first and foremost. Um, Put on your oxygen mask before assisting others. Again, these might be quotes that you've seen before, but um, it is really vital that you are able to look after yourselves, and we're going to think about some ways of doing that now. Um, Checking your battery. This is a useful visual just to kind of help you to think about how you're currently feeling, whether you're feeling great, whether you're feeling good, whether you're okay, whether you're meh, whether you're struggling or whether you're feeling empty. And it's a little bit like what we do with the children when we're having them think about zones of regulation and where they're at and what they would need to do to get themselves back into that green zone or back into a good place for learning. So it is important for all of us as adults to be able to think about our own well-being and think about what we need to do to help ourselves to feel better in order for us then to support others. So we're going to do another activity now. There's both an individual part of this and a discussion part in groups. Um, on the next slide, we're going to show you a well-being web. You might be familiar with well-being webs through the GERFIC that we've used with the children and young people themselves. This is a specific one for staff well-being, and it's to help you to think about ways of looking after your own well-being. So there should be paper copies available of this web, and we would encourage you just to take some time yourselves to complete that, thinking about your own life, and then to discuss with others in your group what ways do you take care of your own well-being. Um, are there ideas that you can share with others that might help? So here is that wellbeing web. As I say, I hope you have a paper copy available, um, but if not, you can think about it from this slide. So as you can see, there are 8 different points to this web. It thinks about family life, exercise, diet, sleep, work or career, lifestyle, social life, hobbies and interests. So what we're asking you to do is to use the scale and to give yourself a number from 1 to 5 for each of these indicators where you're thinking about yourself and you're thinking about where you're at in that aspect of your life. So if you think that aspect of your life is very healthy and very well, circle it 5. If you think that actually this is not an area of your life that's very well, or that it's something that's causing you concern, then you can circle it as a 1 and use the numbers in between on the scale. Um, so this is intended to be an interactive and engaging process to help increase your awareness of your own well-being and then to be able to foster self-reflection and help. This sheet will be for your own private use and doesn't need to be shared with anyone else. So I hope you found that exercise useful, both the individual wellbeing web and also the discussion in groups. Um, in their book, Teacher Wellbeing and Self-Care, Adrian Bethune and Emma Kell talk about how the innately giving nature of the teaching profession can quickly lead to burnout. School staff working with children are always giving of themselves, and the result is that you can feel quickly exhausted, irritable, or unheard, and then struggle to contain and support the emotions of the children in your care. So how do we help you with that? How do we help one another with that? The ideas on these slides are nothing particularly new, and it's not an exhaustive list. The ideas are things you've maybe already discussed in your group time, but there's no harm in us mentioning them again and just really emphasizing the importance of this area. So the first one, promoting a healthy work-life balance. It might help you to think about tasks that you must do compared to tasks that you want to. It's really important to remember that long hours of working, it does have a negative impact on your well-being, and to try to remember to take breaks and to try to find activities that you find restful or revitalizing, and to not feel guilty for doing those activities. They're not indulgent, they're necessary. And all staff should feel safe in asking for help and confident in saying if you can't do something right away. And it's important that we create that culture for everybody to feel safe in saying that. We might want to look for ways of reducing demands. For example, instead of doing lots of laborious marking, could you give verbal feedback or have the children mark one another's work? If there are administrative tasks requiring done within a school, then the leadership should consider how these could be shared between staff and also give plenty advanced warning about those, and offer flexibility in terms of where and when staff can prepare for lessons or assessments, and we should be trusting our staff to be able to be creative in juggling your responsibilities. Limiting intrusive communication. This is really just thinking about emails kind of in the evenings or at weekends, and it can be really demoralizing to open your inbox and find a whole flood of messages waiting to be read, and it can also make it really difficult for you to switch off and to fully rest. You, as a school or establishment, you might want to consider having curfews on weekday emails and none at all at the weekends. However, it's really important to balance that with all staff needs, because I'm very aware that some staff find it helpful for their well-being to be able to respond to things in their own time. And I've seen on a number of emails in the signature line just a message saying, you know, I'm sending this at a time that suits me. Please don't feel any pressure to respond at that time yourself. So perhaps this is something worth discussing as a staff group, and thinking about what works best for your staff. In some schools, there are well-being programs and opportunities for staff to engage in things like running clubs or meditation or book clubs or regular social events. I've heard of some schools going on long hill walks and things together. And these are really good ideas, and they should be open to all staff, but at the same time attendance should not be compulsory. And obviously some people prefer to do things on their own individually at home, or they have their own children and personal commitments and hobbies. But it is something to think about if there's not already that sort of thing within your school, and worth speaking with one another about what might help. It is important that everybody's efforts and achievements are recognised. We spend a lot of time recognising the achievements and the efforts of children and young people, but we do the same with each other. We want to capitalize on any opportunity really to celebrate even the smallest win. And there needs to be active prevention of gossip and rumours, which can easily rise to misunderstandings and resentment. We want to be factual about what is happening, when and why, and ensure that everybody's responsibilities are clearly defined, achieved, recognised, and celebrated. And it might be something to consider if your school doesn't already have this, but to have designated open door times to senior management, so that staff can debrief about difficult moments. And within that, it's also important to recognise and to be aware of the well-being of the senior management team as well. So it's about doing things in a way that protect and nurture all of you within the school at any level. It may be the senior leadership team have a rota system where volunteers could have a quick check-in with staff over the course of a week, or a system that offers protected time for reflection and supervision. And really that could be a preventative approach to start identifying signs of stress and burnout within staff, and to give opportunities to just check in terms of well-being. We felt that this story about a starfish might be something encouraging, when day in, day out, we know that school staff are trying to support so many children and feeling exhausted in doing so, and that it might feel never ending and it might feel fruitless. So this is a story which hopefully you will find encouraging. You may already have heard it, but here we go. So one day an old man was walking along the beach in the early morning and noticed the tide had washed thousands of starfish up onto the shore. Ahead he spotted a boy gathering up the starfish, then one by one tossing them back into the ocean. He approached the boy and asked why he spent so much energy doing what seemed to be a waste of time. The boy replied, "The starfish cannot live if they are left out in the sun." Then the old man gazed out as far as he could see and responded, "But there must be thousands of miles of beaches and countless starfish. You can't possibly rescue all of them. What difference is throwing back a few going to make anyway?" The boy bent down, picked up yet another starfish, and threw it as far as he could into the ocean. Then he turned, smiled, and said, "It made a difference to that one." The old man leaned over, picked up a starfish, and joined the boy, throwing starfish into the water. Finally, we just really want to make you aware of this document, which is the Employee Wellbeing and Health Handbook. This is available on the SBC intranet for staff, and there are signposts within the document to many other organisations which offer support for a range of wellbeing issues. Okay, so moving on now to the power of relationships. So we have really emphasized the importance of positive relationships throughout the series of trainings that we've done on nurture. In pretty much every nurture principle, we've touched upon the importance of having positive relationships, relationships at all levels between staff and other staff, between staff and children and young people, and between young people themselves as peers. And today we're going to think again about the importance of relationships, because really this is the fundamental building block of the development of well-being for children and young people. It is about having positive relationships in their lives. Um, So well-being within the school or establishment environment is underpinned by nurturing relationships, and developmental relationships are essential in helping young people thrive. By developmental relationships, what we mean by that term is relationships that help young people to grow and to develop. So, what we know from research is that young people who experience stronger relationships with adults are more likely to report greater self-awareness, emotional competence, personal responsibility, and a willingness to take on challenges. So you can see there just the link between strong, positive relationships and well-being. Um, and these close connections, these close relationships are critically important for all children and young people, but especially those growing up in challenging circumstances. So this is a lovely quote here from Peter Benson. He says that after decades of forming hypotheses, conducting surveys, crafting and rewriting definitions, analysing data, and writing journal articles, researchers and practitioners have arrived at a surprisingly simple conclusion. Nothing, nothing has more impact in the life of a child than positive relationships. Developmental relationships help young people become their best selves. Young people with developmental relationships are more likely to be resilient in the face of challenges and to grow up thriving. So the entire web of relationships, I've already mentioned this, that peer relationships, near peers, families, and other adults, the whole web of relationships within a child or young person's life really matter. And what we know is multiple positive, caring relationships create the web of support, care, and guidance that young people need growing up. And within schools and settings, building this web requires a really intentional and inclusive focus on relationships that is fully integrated into what the school or nursery already does. It's part of day-to-day teaching, part of day-to-day interacting with our children and young people, that we are intentionally and deliberately focusing on our relationship with them, focusing on the way that we speak with them, the way that we nurture them, the way that we find out about who they are as individuals, and we help them to know that we care and that they matter. So here's another quote by Peter Benson saying, relationships are the oxygen of human development. I really like this quote because, obviously without oxygen, we cannot survive. Without relationships, we cannot develop as human beings in a way that makes us well and healthy and thriving. So we're now going to move on and think a bit deeper about relationships and thinking about what things our children and young people need to experience in our relationships with them. Um, so firstly, it starts with expressing care, which is really more of an active thing than just caring about the child or young person. You may care very deeply for them, but this is actually about expressing that. So, children and young people need us to show them that we're paying attention to them, that we're invested in them, and that we will even make sacrifices for them. It also goes beyond care, so it goes to providing support for them. This can be supporting them in working towards their goals and aspirations, supporting them within your class to achieve their academic goals. It can start by us being a good role model for them, but it may also mean that we advocate for them and with them for the things that they need to grow and develop. Thirdly, children and young people also need us to challenge and to push them to grow. They need us to inspire them and they need us to hold them accountable. Um, Sometimes that might mean being quite firm in terms of boundaries and expectations, and challenge. And it is really important that we always remember that nurture is not just about expressing care for the young person, but it is about giving them really firm boundaries and challenging them in nurturing ways and holding them accountable for their behaviours. Um, it's really a mix of care and challenge that is essential for healthy relationships. Fourthly, we must share power with children and young people, giving them increasing autonomy and responsibility as they grow up. So this means that we give them voice, we negotiate and collaborate with them in our relationships. And this point really underscores that healthy relationships are two-way relationships, that each person influences the other. Um, Indeed, most of us would say that we've been changed in both small and large ways through our relationships with our own children or with other young people that we know. And finally, in our relationships with children and young people, they need us to help expand their horizons. We can help them explore and connect with new people, places, and ideas. We can help them work through the barriers they encounter along the way. And it's part of our job as caring adults to open windows and doors through which young people can discover who they are and where they fit in the world. So these five elements, expressing care, providing support, challenging growth, sharing power, and expanding possibilities, are all part of what many of you do really instinctively with children and young people. And also many young people do instinctively for us and with each other as well. And again, we must not forget the power of those positive peer relationships too. So now we have another group activity where we're going to encourage you to think about these five key elements of developmental relationships that were on the previous slide. I'll put the slide back on in a second for you. But discuss with others in the group, how might you put these into practice? What sort of things practically can you be doing to develop these elements of relationship? And just a reminder before we do this activity that how we interact with children on a daily basis will have an enormous impact on what they think, feel, and remember. So here are these 5 points for you again. And again, if you're discussing in groups, you can maybe take about 10 or even 15 minutes for this activity. So welcome back again. I hope you found that activity useful. And we're now going to think about each of these five areas and give some examples of things that practically you can be doing. These might be the same things that you've already just been discussing in your group. There might be different ideas here. That's all fine. It's not an exhaustive list at all. It's really just meant as a kind of prompt for you. So as we go through these five areas, the wording is going to be from the child's voice. So it's what you can be doing for the child as though they are speaking. So for expressing care, it's show me that I matter to you. Be dependable. Be someone that I can trust. Listen. Really pay attention when we are together. Believe in me. Make me feel known and valued. And be warm. Show me that you enjoy being with me. And encourage me. Praise me for my efforts and achievements. So providing support, help me complete tasks and achieve goals. navigate, guide me through hard situations and systems, empower, build my confidence to take charge of my life, stand up for me when I need it, put in place limits that keep me on track. Um, Again, it's really important to emphasize the boundaries part because a really important part of nurture is having logical and proportionate boundaries, and children really need those in their life to help them to feel safe. So challenge growth. Push me to keep getting better. Expect my best. Expect me to live up to my potential. Stretch. Push me to go further. Hold me accountable. Insist that I take responsibility for my actions. And reflect on failures. Help me to learn from mistakes and setbacks. Um, Again, it is important at this stage just to point out again the part about holding me accountable and about having these boundaries in place, that this is a really essential part of nurture, that it is something that children need to feel safe and secure, and in order to grow in healthy ways and for the development of their well-being, they need to be um, supported to take responsibility for their actions. Um, this slide might fit in quite nicely with restorative approaches that we've been using for some time now in our local authority when there are situations or disagreements or something has happened, that we can have a restorative conversation where we can help the children and young people to recognize their own responsibilities and to think positively about how to repair that and how to put that right. Um, when we're thinking about boundaries, we might want to use language such as okay and not okay, very clear language that help children to know um, what is okay and what is not okay within their behaviours. But always to be doing this in a supportive and caring yet challenging way. Fourthly, sharing power. Treat me with respect and give me a say. Respect me, take me seriously and treat me fairly. Include me, involve me in decisions that affect me. Collaborate, work with me to solve problems and reach goals. Let me lead, create opportunities for me to take action and lead. And finally, expanding possibilities. Connect me with people and places that broaden my world. Inspire me to see possibilities for my future. Expose me to new ideas, experiences, and places. Broaden my horizons. Introduce me to people who can help me grow. And here we have a book that has been recommended by one of our Nurture Steering Group members. It's Unleashing Praise and Positivity in Schools, The Decisive Element. So if you do have an opportunity to get or to read that book, then it does come highly recommended. So we're going to move on now to thinking about how to embed well-being in the curriculum. We have this quote by Andrew Cowley that says, well-being in school must underpin and not undermine the wider curriculum. So there's various recommended books here that you might want to try to get hold of that's around embedding well-being within the curriculum, that's around helping to sustain, support and enable school staff, and there is a big book on the whole school well-being. These do come recommended. So first of all, just a reminder, when we're talking about embedding wellbeing in the curriculum, that it is an integral part of the curriculum for excellence. In the health and wellbeing experiences and outcomes document, it says that learning in health and wellbeing ensures that children and young people develop the knowledge and understanding, skills, capabilities, and attributes which they need for mental, emotional, social, and physical well-being now and in the future. And that each establishment working with partners should take a holistic approach to promoting health and well-being, one that takes account of the stage of growth, development, and maturity of each individual and the social and community context. And here are just some of the things listed within the Curriculum for Excellence that promote health and well-being. And connected to these, there are a number of experiences and outcomes with each of them. So I can expect my learning environment to support me to develop my self-awareness, self-worth, and respect for others, to meet challenges, manage change, and build relationships, to experience personal achievement and build my resilience and confidence, to understand and develop my physical, mental, and spiritual well-being and social skills, to understand that adults in my school community have a responsibility to look after me, listen to my concerns, and involve others where necessary, and to assess and manage risk and understand the impact of risk-taking behaviour. So all of these are already incorporated in the Curriculum for Excellence. This isn't anything new. This is what we are already doing. And I think the training and nurture today is really just to help us see how all of this joins together, and how our nurturing relationships with our children and young people can support the curricular part of health and well-being within the Curriculum for Excellence. So now thinking more generally about embedding well-being in the curriculum, Andrew Cowley argues that well-being cannot be confined to a series of one-off lessons or short-lived annual campaigns, but it needs to be reflected in all aspects of school life. Nurture and well-being are far more powerful when they are absorbed through various relationships, subjects, routines, and contexts, rather than standalone PSE lessons. Um, so that is really vital to think that when we're thinking about curriculum, we're talking about across the whole school in all subjects and all contexts. Physical health, we also know, is a key component of mental health. So, for example, when we think about things like the Daily Mile, which I know some of our schools have engaged with and are still doing, so children get the opportunity to walk in the fresh air and to chat with school staff and one another, and that can be really positive for their mental health as well as their physical health. And lots of academic and social concepts can be conveyed and practiced through physical activities such as action songs, parachute games, obstacle courses. A lot of learning can occur through those physical activities. And emotions can also be explored using the creative arts as well. So we can use creative arts, for example, to think about facial expressions, to think about words, to practice expressions in the mirror, to use a body map to teach where different feelings can manifest within the body, to discuss how different characters in a story may be feeling. We could use puppets to role play emotional vocabulary. We can think about using calming techniques. And it's also important to make time to talk about family experiences, personal role models, and meaningful routines, which are part of each child's everyday life. If we want to create a truly inclusive society, we need to learn from each other. History, religion, home economics, modern languages, they're all a perfect conduit for teaching about words, songs, foods, and origins of different cultures. And that helps a child to feel valued and helps to nurture in a way that improves well-being. We want to take this opportunity to link this now to the SBC policy on respectful relationships and anti-bullying. Um, in Scottish Borders learning establishments, adults should work together with children and young people to create an environment that encourages respect, celebrates difference, and promotes positive relationships and behaviour. Children and young people are more likely to develop self-confidence, resilience, and positive views about themselves where open and respectful relationships exist between adults and other children and young people. The starting point for promoting respectful relationships and behaviour is the provision of a coherent and inclusive curriculum, effective and engaging learning and teaching, and a whole school nurturing ethos based on positive relationships, um, and a whole school commitment to inclusion. That's just a passage there read directly from the Respectful Relationships and Anti-Bullying Policy. And just some other points to make around embedding well-being in the curriculum. Um, that we want to remember that mistakes and setbacks are a normal and helpful part of the learning process, really regardless of the subject. Um, Admitting our own mistakes as adults is a great way of modelling this, and activities which have more than one right answer can also help to promote different ways of thinking and provide opportunities for choice and control. Um, Mathematics is a great subject for reinforcing how there are multiple ways of solving the same problem. And it's through all of these curricular areas that children will experience making mistakes, and it's up to the adults that are supporting them there to be able to help them to realize that those mistakes are normal and necessary, that we all make them, and that we above all can learn from them. And that is really important in terms of nurturing well-being, because there's a real sense of failure that can develop, and a fear of failure that can develop if we don't normalize mistakes and setbacks. We want to utilise the lived experience of older children. This says in secondary settings, but actually it doesn't have to be just in secondary settings. But this is an example that is given because we can think about how invaluable the experiences of older pupils in the school might be for younger pupils who are just joining. So, for example, for senior students to share some of their stories of how they settled into the new environment and made friends when they just started secondary school. They might also have lots of practical suggestions for things like managing coursework expectations and exam stress. And again, it's about sharing that information. It's about utilising lived experiences. As I've said, this example is in secondary settings, but equally the same could be said for um, children helping one another in primary and nursery settings as well. And we want to share information openly on helpline numbers and websites, things like Childline, Young Minds, Kidscape, Beat, Anna Freud, all of these different organisations. If these are visible in a wide range of spaces within the school building and easily accessible on the school website, for example, then it does normalise the need for support, um, and helps people feel less alone, helps them to know that there are others out there that can help them. So that is something that can very easily be done. And I know from being in schools that it already is done in many establishments. So the final section that we're moving on to is about getting good at taking in the good. Um, Again, there is recommended reading here about well-being in the primary classroom, and This quote from Adrian Bethune says, alongside the skills of reading, writing, and maths, we can add skills for happiness. And that is really what we mean by getting good at taking in the good. It's about developing skills that can help us and others to feel happier, and to have a more positive outlook on life. So, thinking about getting good at taking in the good, Rick Hanson proposes that noticing and absorbing positive experiences needs to be a regular part of our lives. He likens it to deepening the keel of a sailboat so that it's more capable of handling and recovering from strong winds. And he gives some ideas for nurturing happiness and for teaching children some key skills for looking after their mental health. Um, so, firstly, developing gratitude practices. This is about reflecting on good things from the day or something that excites you about tomorrow. It's perhaps keeping a weekly diary of things which have gone well, and it's about perhaps scheduling time for children to discuss, write about, or draw happy memories that elicit positive and thankful feelings. Making kindness a regular habit. Um, there could be designated weeks throughout the year, where children are encouraged to engage in random acts of kindness within the classroom or the wider school or even the local community. There's monthly calendars, for example, that the organisation Action for Happiness provide that have lots of simple and practical ideas for making kindness a regular habit. Um, a letter of thanks can help others feel appreciated and kept in mind. And I've seen in some schools that they display children's good deeds on a wall or a notice board, that so everyone has a responsibility to notice and record these acts of kindness and encourage and inspire others to join in. Helping children to achieve their flow state. Um, During times where we are very absorbed and engaged in an activity, we lose a sense of time and we feel very fulfilled, and that is known as the flow state. Um, it's when we have downtime or where we can access activities that truly absorb and engage us. So giving children opportunities to talk about their special interests can be really rewarding. And Adrian Bethune recommends activating flow experiences within learning activities, and this can involve providing more autonomy within a task or adjusting the level of challenge, um, differentiating the materials to link with a child's interests and everyday experiences, really to try to help children to achieve their flow state, which can be really rejuvenating and really powerful in terms of emotional well-being. Promoting personalized stress busters. So some children might enjoy guided meditation or muscle relaxation activities. Others might prefer a deep breathing exercise or a simple grounding activity or visualizing a calm and safe place. We should also communicate key affirmations on a regular basis, such as you are seen and heard, you are loved, it's okay to feel this way. You can ask for help. These are all ways of helping children to be able to respond if they're feeling stressed. And it's important for the adults to model how to reframe negative thinking, um, so we can sensitively challenge worries and fears by looking for evidence of when a thought is and isn't true, by reflecting on what others might say in response to this thought, and by identifying people, places, and times which make the thought more manageable. Um, Rick Hanson also recommends spending more time appreciating the little things. So that these little positive things are more prominent in our minds, and help to take the place of more negative thinking. But this is really about adults reframing negative thinking, and gently challenging a child's negative thought patterns. Encouraging children to make plans and set goals for themselves. This might be as simple as an activity where they write a letter to their future selves, or it can be about reminding them of how they have coped with difficult moments in the past and how they can learn from those moments. Making a book of success can be quite powerful for revisiting previous successes and times of resilience. Noticing and praising the effort which the child is applying and how they are persisting with a more challenging task. When we use language such as, take a moment to think and then try again, the child can then apply that simple language for self-talk for future situations. So again, we model how to help the child to persist and to apply self-talk to support them with that. And establishing support networks. So that might be involving using friends as support. So if there are children who get along particularly well, or children who are particularly good listeners, or members of staff who can act as key adults to facilitate check-ins with children during their day. We want to empower kind and responsible students who can help to monitor younger children, for example, in the playground. Student councils can also help to elicit children's voices about different issues and how they could be addressed by staff. So all of that is about us creating networks within the school of adults, of teachers, of support staff, and of students themselves, who can all be encouraged to notice and to support one another. So just as we come to the end of this session, it's useful to revisit the aims that we started out with, and think about how we have covered these. So we did think about what we mean by the development of well-being, and how nurture is important to support our children's well-being and to support the development of their well-being. And we spoke about very practical ways that we can implement this within our schools and settings. We emphasised the importance of staff well-being and self-care. We emphasised the importance of the relationships and the power of these relationships. Relationships meaning between staff and each other, between staff and children and young people, and between the young people themselves, their peer relationships. And how important it is to nurture those relationships in order to support a young person's self-esteem. We spoke about how important it is for well-being to be embedded in the curriculum, and for us to work on getting good at taking in the good. So just as we come to the end of the session now, we have one final slide, which is just around considering for yourselves as individuals and for your school or setting what the next steps will be. So you now can take time to think for yourself, and also to discuss with one another about what changes you feel might be important for your school or establishment. What might you try to do differently as an individual practitioner, and what is the next step you want to take? And this is our presentation come to an end now, so please do spend the rest of the time with your staff groups thinking about these next steps. And please bear in mind that your school educational psychologist and the Inclusion and Wellbeing Service will be available to discuss any further training or anything that you feel that could support you as an individual or your school to progress further within this nurture principle. So thank you very much for your time today, and I hope you found this training worthwhile.